Welcome! In the last lecture, we created these variables inside of our blueprint for us to tweak the values inside of our snowstorm Niagara system. At this point, we are pretty much done with our snowy weather. And the last cool feature that I like to add in is, I want our weather system to have the ability to animate the snow coverage effects. Currently, how we are displaying the snow is through a one-click switch. Now, if I change this from D-Day Snowy to D-Day Sunny, we will no longer have snow on our objects and on the landscape. And if I change this back, we'll have the snow back. The thing that I want is, when it's snowing, I want our snow to appear bit by bit. And to achieve that, let's remind ourselves how did we put the snow on the rock at the first place. So in case you forget, everything was done inside of our material function snowy weather blend. So we are controlling when we should display the snow through this if node using this collection param is snowing. And by using this if node here, it can only be a one-click switch. And in order to show the snow bit by bit, we'll need to use the node lerp. So we can plug this collection param into this alpha socket of the lerp node, and by slowly increasing this value from 0 to 1, the mask that we're using to blend the snow will increase from 0 to the mask value we set in socket B. And this is how we can animate our snow coverage. Alright, that's the theory part. Let's start coding. Back to my project, we'll first need to modify our material function. So for that, I'm going to go back to my materials folder, double click to open this material function, weather, open this snowy weather blend. And I'm going to go to our mask. So these nodes here are the mask that we are using to blend our snow material with this incoming base material. And here's how I like to handle it. So I'm going to hold down L to bring our lerp node. Then I'm going to plug this is snowing into the alpha socket and plug this mask into this socket B. Organize my graph a bit. And before I plug this value into the alpha socket, I'm going to add in a static switch to enable or disable this animation effects. And for the value inside of this switch now, I'm going to right mouse button click, bring out another function input. I'm going to move this switch to here, move this input to here. And for this input name, I'm going to change it to can animate snow coverage. And I'm going to change its input type from a vec3 to a static bool. Then I'm going to take this use preview value as default. So I'm going to give it a default value of true. So bring out a static bool, take this value, plug this into the preview socket. So by default, for all the objects in our level, including our landscape that's using this snowy weather plane, the snow coverage can be animated. Alright, I'm going to change the sort priority to 30. Then I'm going to plug this into the value socket. So when this is true, then this output from the lerp node will go through. When this is false, this if node will go through. Then plug the output into the alpha socket, move these nodes to here. And move this one to here. Alright, I'm going to click apply. And let's go see what this material function looks like in our material. Go back to my level. I'm going to try to select my landscape. And you can see at this point, no matter where I click in the level, I always have this dynamic sky blueprint selected. And the reason for that is, currently we have these particles everywhere in our level. So no matter where we click, we'll end up on clicking these particles. And to fix this, we'll need to manually disable the translucency selection. And the hotkey for that is we can press T on our keyboard to disable that. Right after I press that, and now I can select my landscape along with other actors in the level. And if I try to enable it back, so press T again, now I can no longer select these actors, and I'll go back to the state where I can only select this BP dynamic sky actor. So the hotkey for that is T. Alright, I'm going to press it again. Then I'm going to select my landscape, then scroll down to go to the landscape material, double click to open it. So this is what our material function is currently looking like. We have one more function input added, and the default value is true. If we want to disable this animation effects, we can do it per material by manually passing in a static bool of false. We can do that later if we need for our landscape. So these are the new nodes that I just added to my material function. I created a new function input and added a static switch to allow us to toggle this animation effects on and off. And in order to be able to select our actors again in our level, we'll need to disable the translucency selection, and the hotkey for that is T. So if you'd like to catch up with me, you can pause the video now and give this a go. I'm going to pause here for a few seconds, then we're going to move on. Welcome back. Now that with our material function ready, to animate this, we'll need to do it through our blueprint, Dynamic Sky. So I'm going to open it, and I'm going to go inside of the event graph, so double click to open this. And there's something I like to do after begin play. So after calling the function handle weather settings, I'm going to right mouse button click and type in set scalar parameter value. And the collection here, I'm going to change it to this NPC weather properties. And the parameter name, change it to it's snowing. And for this value, I'm going to reset it back to 0. And now if I click this pin to here and click compile, so this means after we click play, we will no longer see the snow in our level. And we can start animating after this snow. So I'm going to right mouse button click and type in add timeline. So select this add timeline. And I'm going to change its name to snow coverage animation timeline. And double click to open it. So I'm going to click this add track and add in a flow track. And this is how I like to handle it. Since I want to have a variable to control the animation time, so the total amount of time needed for the full snow coverage, I'm going to first create a normalized flow track inside. So to do that, I'm going to right mouse button click to add new key and change the value for its time to 0. And right mouse button click to add in another key, change the value for the time to 1, and change its value to 1 as well. And I'm going to select these two keys, press F on my keyboard to zoom in, then press 1 on my keyboard to smooth out the curve. So this is the end result we have. Then I'm going to change this flow track name. So right mouse button click, select this rename. I'm going to call it normalized flow track. And I'm going to click compile, go back to my event graph. Now we have this normalized flow track in here. Then I'm going to select this set scalar parameter value node, press Ctrl+D to duplicate it. And I'm going to connect this normalized flow track into this value, connect this update pin to here. So by our current setup, this value will increase from 0 to 1 within 1 second. And the value 1 second here is the total amount of time needed for the full snow coverage. And to better control this, this is what we can do. So I'm going to move these two nodes out. So anytime when we add in a timeline to our blueprint, inside of this components dropdown, we'll have a new component added. So this snow coverage animation timeline component, and this is the one that we can use to manipulate our animation time. I'm going to drag it out, select it, then I'm going to move this one to here, and I'm going to drag out this pin. I'm going to type in set play rate. And for this new rate here, this is the math that we can use. So I'm going to right mouse button click and type in divide. So bring out a divide node. Then I'm going to change its input value type to float. So right mouse button click and go to this float single precision. And for the value inside of socket A, I'm going to change it to 1. For the value inside of socket B, now if I give it a hard-coded value of 5 and plug the final result into this new rate, and now our new play rate for this timeline will become 0.2. For this normalized flow track, it'll take 5 seconds to go from 0 to 1. So the value we're plugging into this socket B will be the total amount of time needed. So let's test this. I'm going to change this to 10. So now you'll need 10 seconds for this value to increase it to 1. And I'm going to plug this into here and plug this one into play. Alright, I think this will do for now. And before this set play rate, I'm going to drag out this pin and type in delayed. So I'm going to use a delay node here so that it will be more obvious for us to see the effects. For the duration, I'm going to change it to 1.5 seconds. So the animation will start 1.5 seconds later after I click play. Alright, I'm going to click compile and go back to my level. Let's test this. I'm going to click play. So at the beginning, I don't have snow, and slowly, bit by bit, I'll have snow appearing. And same with our footprints. Great, everything is working. So these are the new nodes that I just added to my blueprint. After this function handle weather settings, I reset the value is snowing back to 0. Then I add in a timeline in my event graph and created this normalized flow track to set the value is snowing again. And this is what my track looks like in the timeline. By default, the value will increase from 0 to 1 within 1 second. And in order to have a better control on the total amount of time needed, here's the math that we can use. So we can use this timeline component that comes with our timeline and set the play rate before we play the timeline. And these are my final notes in my blueprint. So if you'd like to catch up with me, you can pause the video now and give this a go. I'm going to pause here for a few seconds, then we're going to move on. Welcome back. And the last thing that I want to do, I want to create variables inside of this blueprint for us to control this weather animation effects. Since the variables I'm about to create are related to the snowy weather, I'm going to directly create variables inside of this struct. So I'm going to go to my Niagara and go inside of snow, open this struct, and go to this structure. I'm going to add in 2 new variables. So the first one, it needs to be a Boolean. I'm going to call this should animate snow coverage in runtime. Then I'm going to add in another variable. I'm going to call this for snow coverage time. Then I'm going to move these 2 variables to the top. Then I'm going to give them some default values. So go to the default values. For this Boolean, I'm going to give it a value of true. And for this snow coverage time, I need to change its type from a Boolean to a float. And give it a default value of 10 seconds, then hit save. And I'll need to modify my blueprint. So go back to it. I'm going to go to begin play. So after this function handle weather settings, I'm going to drag out the macro get current weather type and connect this one to here. So we should only do all of this when it's snowing. And I'm going to hold down B on my keyboard to bring out a branch node. So when it's snowing, and I'm gonna go to my struct, hold down Control and drag it out. Then I'm gonna break the struct and move it to here. So only when it's snowing and this Boolean is true, should we do all of the things here. So I'm gonna connect this true pin to here and organize my graph a bit. Move them up to here and delete these 2 nodes. Then I'm gonna connect this snow coverage time to this B socket, and I'm going to click compile. Now go back to my level, and inside of this drop down I have 2 new variables. So now if I change this time to 5 seconds and click play to test it again. Alright, now it'll take 5 seconds for the full snow coverage. And if I disable this Boolean and click play, we will no longer see the effects. And if I change this to sunny and click play, we won't be able to see the effects either. And that's great. Alright, I'm going to change this back to snowy and click play again. That's pretty much it for our animation effects. Looking pretty cool. So these are the nodes that I just added to my blueprint. I also created 2 new variables inside of the struct to control the animation. Feel free to use this as a reference if you need. Alright, time for you to animate your own snow effects, and I'll see you in the next lecture.